Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. European leaders are pressing Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky to meet and end the war in Ukraine once and for all. The province is celebrating the opening of a new $20 million pea processing pilot facility for Lethbridge. And Flames hockey great Johnny Gaudreau speaks about the potential of re-signing in Calgary as the All-Star forward heads to unrestricted free agency.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Agri-food is pretty big business and is booming right here in southern Alberta. A new pea protein processing plant has made its way to Lethbridge. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details on this exciting new initiative, which was previously a brewery here in our city.
On May 3rd, this place was a brewery. It was a pub. It was dark. It was a pub. That's what it was meant to be.
A total of 10,000 hours was needed from May 3rd to early Monday morning to transform the old Cooley Brewery to the new PIP International Pea Processing Facility. The project had an investment of $20 million from private and public partners. The Alberta government awarded PIP with $1 million through the Canadian Agricultural Partnership to support engineering and purchase processing equipment for the pilot facility.
The strength of our region can be found in multi-generational growers that produce some of the highest quality of agricultural products in the world.
The demand for plant-based ingredients and food options will only grow as global populations grow. This project will help ensure Lethbridge plays a key role moving forward in the plant protein sector, and that we'll continue to live up to our social media motto of hashtag Southern Alberta Feeds the World.
A new $150 million yellow pea protein facility will also be established, and construction is set to begin in late 2022. The facility will create 100 new jobs and process close to 126,000 tons of yellow peas annually. More than $75 million in pea contracts for local and regional growers will also be generated.
Harnessing the innovation and vision of Alberta-based entrepreneurs like PIP is key to ensuring a bright economic future. We also recognize the significant growth potential of agro-processing in Alberta and the important role that plant-based products play as a driver of diversification.
The Canadian Agricultural Partnership is a commitment through the provincial, territorial, and federal governments, which comes at a cost of $3 billion through 5 years. The program supports Canada's agricultural, agri-food, and agri-products sectors. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The Alberta NDP is demanding the UCP deliver the promised rebates to Alberta households and for public reporting of just how dire the financial situation is for many families. NDP energy critic Kathleen Ganley says with inflation at an all-time high, Albertans need the help right now.
We advocated for price protections and an inquiry into what led these costs that are pushing many Alberta families to the brink. On Thursday, the legislative session of the Alberta Legislature adjourned. The government House Leader praised the government for their progress on many legislative bills. But what they didn't do is anything at all about your bills. It has been over 100 days since the UCP promised to take action on utility bills. They since promised $150 in electricity rebates and a natural gas rebate. The amount of money they have promised doesn't go nearly far enough.
Back in April, the province tabled legislation to allow for electricity and natural gas rebates, but said it would be months before Albertans would see any of the extra cash in their pockets. A Lethbridge mom and recent graduate of the Agricultural Sciences program at Lethbridge College says she was motivated by her daughter, who graduated from the same program 2 years ago, to go back to school as a mature student. Her daughter, Allie, says she didn't have the same experience of being able to walk the stage, but was happy to see her mom receive her diploma. Lana Hansame says she enrolled just 2 weeks before the fall semester began in 2020.
The whole family was there for me. They were supportive. It was a lot of work doing school and working 2 jobs and running our farm and, having family at home. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. My biggest thing is, don't hesitate. You're never too young or never too old to go back to school. I was a little worried about being a mature student with a lot of young students and that, but the kids in my class were really great and we all got along really well. I'm
really happy for her. I'm glad she pursued it to continue her education. It is pretty exciting to watch, you know, your mom go across the stage like that. As when I graduated, it was the start of COVID, so we never did convocation, so it was nice to actually experience it, but experience it for her too.
Lana says she's currently working part-time at a job she got through the college, while Ali is also working in her field. A 2-day stonepipe celebration took place this past weekend at Lethbridge College. It included a drumming and singing contest, along with several other events. Stonepipe Days are a chance to recognize Indigenous culture within our community. BCN's Angela Stewart chatted with one attendee who explained why the event was extra special for him.
Members from the Indigenous community came together this weekend for Lethbridge College's annual Stonepipe Days.
Here at Lethbridge College, we're leaders in reconciliation, and we want to be able to showcase that.
Lowell Yellowhorn with the college says this event was special as it piggybacked right off of the spring graduation ceremonies.
There are some graduates who are participating in the festivities, as well as current students. So it's a big homecoming celebration as well.
A number of traditional activities took place, including a singing and drumming contest and even a powwow.
You know, we're featuring Grammy-nominated musical artists, the Black Lodge Singers, and so they're a very celebrated drum group on the powwow trail.
A member of the Black Lodge Singers, David Spotted Eagle, who is also a current student at the college, says this event was a chance to bridge some of those cultural gaps.
Like Indigenous events, I think is very important for Indigenous and non-Indigenous students alike to be involved with. That way, we're sharing our culture. To, in the end, you know, make new families, make new relationships, and build upon that.
Growing up and singing his entire life, Spotted Eagle says being a part of Stonepipe Days is his happy place.
So when I come to a powwow event like this, it brings back so much nostalgia and happy feelings I grew up with my family, the good and the bad times.
A crucial member of the event as well, Spotted Eagle facilitated the hand drumming contest, something he says was a huge honor for him.
I'm able to share a little bit of my story and collaborate with other people's stories as well.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
A dog and its would-be rescuer are happy to be alive following the dog falling off the edge of a cliff in the Lethbridge Coulees over the weekend. Community Animal Services were called to the scene early on Saturday to help rescue the pooch, which had landed on a ledge about halfway down the cliff.
We had contacted Fire and Emergency Services. They responded quickly. Were able to make an assessment, and by the time the fire department had arrived, a bystander who was also on the opposite side of the river from the golf course had attempted to get to the dog and had become stuck themselves. So at that point, the technical rescue team had to rescue obviously a dog and a person, which I imagine is quite difficult, especially a dog. But they were able to get the bystander and the dog back up to the top of the coulee on the east side of the river there.
Now, fortunately, both the dog and the bystander did not sustain serious injuries. The owner of the dog was located a short time later, and no enforcement action was issued against her. It's amazing they survived. Well, we had lots of cloud cover today and much cooler temperatures with a little bit of rain. Jeanette Roche is in now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, will those rain clouds be moving on?
Yeah, it appears that way, Hal. We do have a lot of sunny days ahead of us, but first of all, we are going to encounter a little bit more rain this evening. We're looking at a 60% chance overnight with wind gusts up to 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Overnight low this evening, 4 degrees. Into tomorrow, lots of sunshine, 17 degrees. And after that, lots of sunshine for the rest of the week. I'll have all those details coming up for you later on in the newscast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Lethbridge Police say they issued 50 tickets during the opening weekend of its Open Enforcement Initiative. The LPS have been receiving a number of complaints about speeding, racing, stunting, and loud vehicles of late. Now, with the help from Alberta sheriffs, a number of tickets were handed out for various traffic violations, including racing, excessive noise, and drinking and driving. Police say the Traffic Enforcement Initiative will continue on random weekends throughout the next few months. The Trudeau Liberals introduced new firearms legislation today, but not to ban handguns. That's even though Stats Canada says they are the weapon of choice in 59% of crimes involving firearms over the past 11 years. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau explains what the legislation looks like.
What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. In other words, we're capping the market for handguns.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Ottawa will also increase penalties for gun smuggling, and magazines for long guns will be limited to only hold 5 rounds of ammunition each. It's not clear how long the handgun freeze will last. A final report from the Independent Review on Sexual Misconduct in the Canadian Military was released. Former Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour, who led the review, says the focus on graduates from military college should not be on performance, but instead on conduct and behavior. She also says more female officers are needed in the Canadian Armed Forces.
My recommendations are all interrelated. If what I have referred to in my report is implemented, then I don't see the need for an Inspector General to oversee culture change in relation to sexual misconduct. The Minister and the Department of National Defence have an important role to play, and the contribution of civilians should be enhanced throughout as a source of knowledgeable outside expertise.
Canadian Nexus centres that were shut down in March of 2020 due to the pandemic have not reopened. The Canada Border Services Agency says that it has created a backlog of close to 300,000 applications for the program that lets cross-border travelers use separate speedy lines. Applicants must be risk assessed by both the CBSA and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which reopened its Nexus enrollment centres for applicant interviews on April the 19th. U.S. President Joe Biden grieved with the community of Uvalde, Texas on Sunday, with anguished families of the 19 school children and 2 teachers killed by the gunman. Faced with chance of do something, Biden pledged, "We will." Juan Roberto Carranza was helping his son on a job across the street from Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, when he saw 18-year-old Salvador Ramos speeding and heard him crash into a ditch. He said Ramos then got out of his truck with a rifle and a backpack.
The 2 people from the funeral home, they went to offer him and see if he needed any help, the 2 guys. But after the guy got out of his truck, he fired a round. And then he got out of the truck and started firing at those 2 guys that were trying to offer them some help, assistance. Then I saw them guys running straight to the funeral home through the street. They were running inside just trying to cover themselves. And the gunman, he just went up there, that little tunnel there that he climbed up, crossed the fence, and then he just got a backpack. He had gotten a backpack, a little bag or something, and a rifle he was carrying up in the air. He was walking towards the school, real slow. I was just really seeing mostly what he was carrying. What he was carrying, and he was like, oh, he's going to go straight to the school and he's going to kill those kids.
The last of the victims of a gunman's racist attack at a Buffalo grocery store was laid to rest over the weekend. 86-year-old Ruth Whitfield was the oldest of the 10 people who were killed.
There is an epidemic of racial violence that is accommodated by gun laws that allow people to kill us. You ain't got to love us, but you shouldn't have the easy access to military weapons to kill us.
A medical evacuation train run by a global medical aid organization transported more injured and sick people from eastern Ukraine on Sunday.
They can be different people. Most of them are wounded people who are evacuating from the hospitals in eastern regions which are not safe anymore, and we evacuate them to the hospitals in western Ukraine and Lviv, Ternopil and so on to protect them and to give them proper medical care.
Meanwhile, people in the capital of Kyiv celebrated the city's 1540th birthday over the weekend.
Дякуючи нашим Збройним силам, ми можемо ще святкувати це свято. Натхнення нового їм вооруження, щоб прибуло, щоб вони могли захищати ще довго і виграти цю війну. Перемога буде за нами.
The war between Ukraine and Russia is now heading into its 4th month. European leaders are urging Russian President Vladimir Putin to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to end the war. We asked our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari what a conversation might sound like between the two leaders.
Now that conversation will look like this. Putin will sit down. He'll make his list of requirements or concessions that he requires from the Ukrainians, and then I think once they commit to giving him those things, he'll probably ask for more, because that's the way he is. It will require some of the land to be annexed back to Russia. It will require the denazification of Ukraine, which is what Putin has been. That's been his narrative from the get-go, that there are neo-Nazi influences inside Ukraine that have to be eradicated.
Lisa Daftari will have more on the Ukrainian-Russian war coming up in the second half of our newscast. Ontario voters are going to the polls on June the 2nd. Doug Ford's PC party is looking to be re-elected. Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horwath and Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca shared their party's plans for tackling rising food costs.
So number one, in order to bring down the cost of food, we've made a commitment to take the provincial HST off every single prepared food under $20. So you go to your grocery store on the way home, maybe you pick up a rotisserie chicken or a side salad, as many families often do, bring it home for dinner. Every single time that it's under $20, our plan will save you 8%. Same thing at a bakery, same thing at a coffee truck, same thing at any particular place you might go to.
We have to make sure we're protecting farmland and that we are providing the opportunity for Ontarians in every part of our province to really have access to the amazing agricultural products that are grown and harvested right here in this very region. We need to make sure that when we have retailers of food, particularly the big chains, that they're not colluding to keep prices high.
Calgary Flames winger Johnny Gaudreau had a career-best 40 goals and 75 assists this past season. The 28-year-old All-Star is an unrestricted free agent in July. Now, the question many Flames fans are wondering is, can the team get him under contract once again?
Sit down with my agent this week sometime and figure out what's best for me and my family, and obviously Calgary has a special place in my heart. I've been part of this organization for 11 years now, so ever since day one I got here, the fans, the organization, my teammates, even you guys. Sometimes when I'm playing bad, you guys give me a hard time, but that's all right. But everything about this city I love, and like I said, my wife loves it here. You guys can tell on Twitter. My uncle, my dad, my mom, my sisters, brother, everyone loves Calgary, and it's a special place in our heart, and we love it here, so we'll see what happens.
Even his neighbors shoveled his sidewalk over the winter months to try and convince him to stay in Calgary. Hopefully Johnny Hockey can continue his career in the Stampede City. Well, we had some light showers again today in southwestern Alberta, but it appears as though the rain clouds may be moving out. Full weather details are coming up. We had a mostly cloudy day today with showers in some regions of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Roche is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it appears as though the rain clouds may be leaving us.
Yeah, that's true, but we still could see some showers this evening. We're actually looking at a 60% chance overnight low 4 degrees. The sun will come up tomorrow though, 17 degrees the high, lots of sunshine in the forecast on Wednesday as well, 18 the high there. 20 degrees the high on Thursday, which is actually seasonal for this time of year. Down to 17 on Friday with mainly cloudy skies, 22 on Saturday. And Sunday, we are looking at also a 60% chance of showers that day. Could see a bit of shower activity Friday evening as well, and then coming back for us on Sunday. So the almanac tells us that the average high for this time of year is actually 20 degrees. For the most part, we're a little bit below that. Going to be seeing that though this week later on towards the weekend. 7 degrees is our average low for this time of year. 34, that was our high temperature on this day back in 1986, and in 1989 we had our chilliest, which was -2. Sun rose this morning at 5:30 this morning, right on the nose there. Sunset this evening at 9:28 p.m., giving us almost exactly 16 hours of daylight as we move towards that summer solstice. Okay, so on the west coast, let's take a look here. 30% chance of showers in both Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow, high 19 in Victoria, 18 the high in Vancouver. Sunshine in Edmonton tomorrow, 18 the high there. Calgary looking at a mix of sun and cloud. Sunshine later on in the day there, 15 degrees the high, 20 to 40 kilometer per hour winds in Calgary as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, 18 the high in Saskatoon, 16 in Regina with a mix of sun and cloud. Winnipeg looking at a chance of showers, very windy as well, looking up to 50k winds in Winnipeg, 12 degrees the high there. As we look to the central part of the country, Toronto looking at sunshine, 30 degrees, warm and humid. We're looking at a humidex there, 35. 32 the humidex in Ottawa, but 27 degrees the high. Looking at showers there, a chance of a thunderstorm there in Ottawa. Montreal also looking at some shower activity as well with a high of 27 degrees. 18 the high tomorrow in Fredericton, chance of showers there. Halifax also seeing some shower activity. 10 degrees the high in Charlottetown only, and looking at 5 millimeters of rain in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of 12 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Merchants can now apply for credit card processing fee rebates following a multi-million-dollar class action settlement with Visa and MasterCard. Now, that's according to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which says the settlement will cover swipe fees charged to businesses on their customers' transactions dating back 20 years. The settlement does not change the fees, but it does give merchants the option to pass the charges onto consumers beginning this fall. Stats Canada says its latest survey shows businesses still expect to face a variety of obstacles over the next few months related to rising costs, hiring, and supply chain issues. The survey conducted from April to earlier this month showed almost 50% of respondents expect the rising cost of labor, energy, and raw materials to be their biggest obstacle over the next few months. It also found that many business owners expect challenges in maintaining or acquiring products and supplies to worsen in the short term. Half of the business owners surveyed expect their profits to remain unchanged, and 39% expect to increase their prices. That's up from 25.9% in the fourth quarter last year. Ottawa and Saskatchewan have announced funding for research on strong carbon in pastures and forage. The $3.2 million was approved under a strategic research initiative for the agriculture and agri-food sectors. Researchers from the University of Saskatchewan and the University of Alberta are to examine soil carbon stocks in Saskatchewan over the next 5 years. Agriculture Minister Marie-Claude Bebeau says carbon storage is important in efforts to mitigate the effects of climate change. Tough new rules proposed by an American regulator could force Canada's oil companies to disclose their Scope 3 emissions. Companies that trade on U.S. stock exchanges would have to make public the emissions created when their customers use their products. Most Canadian energy companies only account for the greenhouse gases created during the extraction and production of oil. Activists say investors have a right to know a company's complete carbon footprint. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Now, Monday was Memorial Day in the United States, and a lot of the numbers are similar to Friday's. The TSX was up 170 points to 20,919. The Dow was up 575 to 33,212. The S&P 500 was up 100 to 4158, and the Nasdaq was up 390 to 12,131. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 210 to 117.17 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 3 cents to 8.70 US. Gold was even at $18.55.24 US an ounce, and silver was down a cent to $21.96 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $16.05 per bushel, barley's at $10.23, canola's at $26.85, and corn is at $12.31 per bushel. Live cattle were down 23 cents to $132.18. Feeder cattle were down 35 cents to $166.33, and lean hogs were down 70 cents to $110.40. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 79 cents US. Recapping one of our top stories, PIP International, a Canadian-based agri-food company, announced the opening of a new $20 million pea processing pilot facility here in Lethbridge. The facility, which was previously Cooley Brewery, was converted into a fully commercialized pea processing and testing center. European leaders are pressing for a meeting between Ukraine President Zelensky and Russian President Putin to bring an end to the war in Ukraine once and for all, which is now entering its 4th month. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details for us momentarily. The war between Ukraine and Russia is now heading into its fourth month, and the fierce battles continue in the eastern region of Ukraine as Ukrainian President Zelensky visited the front. Now, to discuss the war in more details is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftar, who joins us now from Los Angeles. Lisa, Zelensky made a rare frontline visit to Kharkiv, the country's second largest city, to assess the strength of the national defense. How's it looking for the Ukrainian forces?
You know, it's interesting. The fact that we say this has been going on for 4 months is crazy. It's crazy that the Ukrainians have been able to hold on for this long. If we had talked about this, months before this started, we would have thought this wouldn't have even lasted 4 days. If you put the might of the Russian military side by side with the Ukrainians, it's not even, it's not a question or a conversation to be had. Now, the fact that the Ukrainians have been able to hold on for this long doesn't give us any indication as to whether or not they'll be able to hold on forever or how this will end. The most important factor here is how the Russians will decide to end this, and whether or not Vladimir Putin feels like he has some sort of an off-ramp, meaning will he escalate things to really have this, grand finale of sorts? Will he resort to nuclear weapons, chemical weapons? Will he, just back down and say, we've done enough here to take over X, Y, and Z provinces, areas, and, then leave it alone? Or, as some reports indicate, is he sick and not want to carry this out, any further? We really don't know. And again, it comes down to, it's in Russia's hands. It's not in Zelensky's hands. It's not in the US's hands. And as billions of dollars get poured into this here in the United States, it's always a conversation of comparisons, and to say, we don't have money for this, but we gave 40 billion to the Ukrainians. We don't have money for this, but we're giving 40. And it's a valid point to say, for example, we don't have money for school security, but we're giving 40 billion to the Ukrainians. And the only reason I say it's a valid point is that, do the Ukrainians truly have a chance? If they continue to have more weapons, if we give them the latest technology, this morning, I believe it was breaking news that Biden decided to give them even more in terms of technology and weapons. Where is this all going, and why are we putting in this investment into the Ukraine fight? So a lot of questions, not so many answers. And again, all of this comes down to, what will Putin do next?
Lisa, European Union leaders are urging Russian President Putin to begin direct dialogue with Zelensky for peace in Ukraine. What would that conversation actually look like?
Right. And, this has been from the beginning. Why don't they sit down and have a conversation? And Zelensky was always pushing for that. Now, that conversation will look like this. Putin will sit down. He'll make his list of requirements or concessions that he requires from the Ukrainians, and then I think once they commit to giving him those things, he'll probably ask for more, because that's the way he is. And from the beginning of this battle, he did sit down with Erdogan from Turkey and said, "Well, I want these 5 items," and the 5 items were things that the Ukrainians would have put up, but then things changed, and Putin said, "I'm going to go for more." Look, it will require some of the land to be annexed back to Russia. It will require the denazification of Ukraine, which is what Putin has been. That's been his narrative from the get-go, that there are neo-Nazi influences inside Ukraine that have to be eradicated. That's a fair claim and a fair requirement. He will want the Russian language to be reinstated into Ukraine and not to be shunned. And it's interesting to see how Ukraine will respond to this. He will want there to be a demilitarization, particularly now as all this military equipment has been poured into Ukraine. He doesn't want that, obviously, on his doorstep. So Putin will probably want that again as well. Again, how will the international community respond to this? How quickly and how easily will they make this off-ramp readily available for Putin if he should sit down with Zelensky? And the final question then becomes, will Putin want to sit down with Zelensky anytime soon to put an end to this conflict once and for all?
And European leaders have failed to reach an agreement, Lisa, on banning Russian oil imports, which is jacking up the price of fuel even higher. Diplomats in Brussels struggle to clinch a last-hour compromise ahead of a European Council summit.
Yeah, they don't want to put in, they don't want to stop bringing in Russian oil, and it makes sense. The world economy is truly suffering, both the world economy in terms of oil, in terms of basic food prices, because of the wheat shortage, all sorts of supply shortages as a result of this. We're seeing it in the stock market, we're seeing it in the bonds market, we're seeing it in Bitcoin, we're seeing it all throughout as it really makes its toll on the global economy. Now, the Europeans are dragging their feet as usual. But again, perhaps we can put an end to this before they have to even decide, because they have lagged and have not committed to banning Russian oil up to this point. Perhaps they might not have to if we do see talks, if we do see an end to this conflict sometime soon.
Now, Lisa, protesters in Iran are calling for the death of Iran's supreme leader, and they want to overthrow the government as well. The demonstrators are angry at the government's corruption and lack of human rights. It continues.
Yes, and thank you for giving this some airtime, Hal. I mean, this story has been going on. We're entering the third week of Iran protests, and the protesters are angry that they're not getting the global support that they deserve. All they're asking for is basic rights. And I know a lot of people think this is based on food prices, which it initially started out, that was the catalyst, but it quickly went to protesting the entire regime, saying that this is a corrupt regime. This regime is not capable of giving its civilians the basic needs that they need, like basic food supplies and basic medical supplies. And that's how it goes. How people don't dream of these lofty concepts of democracy and justice and liberty. What they do go to bed dreaming about is putting food on the table for their families. And once it gets to that point, that becomes the breaking point. That's when they flood the streets, and that's when they're willing to risk their lives, risk being shot at and being arrested by this government in order to have their voices heard. So we're trying to put this out into the mainstream media that's always reluctant to cover it, particularly now, because as we know, the West and the Biden administration and the Europeans are very gung-ho on getting a nuclear deal. So they don't want to upset that with the narrative that the Iranian people are upset with this government, the same government that we're trying to normalize relations with. So we're having trouble really getting this out into the mainstream media, and we want to get the voices of the Iranian people heard. There are a ton of citizen journalists on the ground there, so we have no excuses that we cannot get a reporter on the ground in Tehran or Khuzestan, which is in the southwest region of Iran. There are a lot of protests there, but it's throughout the country, and people are really angry. They want the world to know their grievances.
Lisa, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett sent out a warning to Iran that its terrorist-sponsoring immunity days are over. Now, the message comes after a week that saw an Iranian colonel assassinated and an Iranian engineer killed in a military complex, both actions reportedly attributed to Israel.
Yes, and attributed to Israel through leaks by the U.S. We reported this on the Foreign Desk as breaking news this week. A colonel was killed. He was from the Revolutionary Guard. A very high-up colonel was shot in front of his house by silenced bullets. Then there was a report that was leaked to the New York Times that Israel admitted to the United States that they took this guy out as a symbolic hit to the Revolutionary Guard for continuing on their nuclear program, continuing to make threats against Israel, and continuing their human rights abuses in Iran. Now, why that was leaked to the New York Times, we don't know. But if you recall, during the Obama administration, there was also a leak when Bibi Netanyahu told Obama that he would, they were planning on taking out nuclear reactors in Iran as a targeted strike. And that was, again, leaked to the media by the Obama administration at that time. So it's very unfortunate that we have these leakers and that this is not a quid pro quo, a reciprocated relationship between Israel and the United States, as it always has been in the past 5 decades. But you have a situation here on our hands where Israel has to watch its own back, and for that reason, they're saying this is a situation where we don't have to give immunity to these leaders anymore. We will take them out as we see fit, as to defend ourselves the way we have to defend ourselves.
Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard is apparently building a massive new support ship near the Strait of Hormuz as it tries to expand its naval presence. Lisa, how much of a threat will this really be to us here in the West?
It's always a threat. Look, it's a threat because we've closed our eyes to the expansion of the Iranian empire, and I don't even want to call it Iranian. It's more like the Islamic Republic's empire. So they will continue chest thumping. They will continue on their parades. They will continue testing missiles. They'll continue enriching uranium, and they will do whatever they can. Look, if you want to compare the 2015 Obama era nuclear talks to the ones we have now, at that time, at least there was this facade of we will behave, we're gonna change our ways, and we want to get this deal to go through. And now you have such an about face where the Iranian regime, they know they're going to get this deal. They know that the West wants it very badly, spearheaded by Biden and the European Union, and they know that they can get away with literally murder. So they will continue making their threats against Israel. They will continue with their presence in the surrounding areas. They'll continue sending money to Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen and Syria, and the list goes on, because they don't have to change their ways. And that is very telling of the foreign policy environment that the Biden administration has created. And when we have this lack of security, it means a lack of security for all. It trickles down for everybody. And that is something to be very, very concerned about right now.
Lisa, the U.S. State Department has been quietly mediating talks between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt on negotiations that could be a good first step toward normalizing relations between the larger Arab countries and the Jewish state. Tell me more.
Yeah, so we had the Abraham Accords under President Trump that brought the moderate Arab nations to a relationship, an economic and otherwise relationship with Israel. And now we've been always wondering whether Saudi Arabia, the godfather of all the Arab nations, would also join in the Abraham Accords, likewise Egypt. And now we know that there have been talks between these two countries and the United States. Of course, some bartering going on. These islands must be returned to Saudi Arabia. That's what they had stipulated as a part of this deal. But this is very important. We know that Saudi Arabia gave their nod, gave their blessing to the smaller Arab nations to normalize relations with Israel in the Abraham Accords. But we were waiting on seeing if this would pan out for the larger Arab states. And now we see that perhaps it will. We've never seen the Biden administration give any credit or kind of acknowledge the benefit of the Abraham Accords. If anything, they would belittle it and talk about how it has no bearing on our foreign policy. So now we see that if they are continuing this line of negotiations with Arab states and Israel, then they are understanding the value and the assets of having these Arab nations grow closer to Israel. And of course, as we know, this is in retaliation to kind of combat the growing threat of Iran's influence in the region. It's not any love affair with Israel, but rather the enemy of my enemy sort of foreign policy going on here.
But let me ask you something. I mean, this war between the Arabs and the Jews has been going on for centuries. How can there really be trust and a foundation be developed in this regard?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And really, if we look at the evolution of the Middle East and we look at where we are now, the Arab Spring told us a lot about the change in the people and the area. And that was to say that the people outgrew these outdated tropes about, the Jews are our enemy. No, maybe the Jews can teach us a thing or two about water irrigation, about apps, about technology, about security. And they want those things for themselves. So when they look at a thriving nation like Israel in the Middle East, a country the size of New Jersey that has more technologies we bring in, the United States brings in Israel for many technologies. If you go into any hospital, you look at any cell phone, you look at any laptop, you have all sorts of technologies from Israel. And well, the nations of the Arab world look at that and say, well, we want a piece of that. Instead of sticking to these old tropes that are from biblical times, we don't want to have any enemies. We'd rather have some profit. We'd rather have prosperity. And that's really the brainchild of the Trump administration to say, they have more in common than not. Let's focus on the economic prosperity that these countries could have if they come together rather than to fight their old ways. And that's exactly what happened. And the proof is in the pudding. You don't have just a piece of paper or a lousy signature that tells us that this is a bogus deal. If you look at the UAE and Israel, for example, you have weddings going on, religious Orthodox Jewish weddings going on in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. You have a ton of reciprocation in terms of technology, deals, private and public. You have tourism going on, a lot of prosperity and a lot to share between the two nations. So I think a lot of the Arab nations are looking at this and saying, we want a piece of the action as well. And they're coming forward to sign on.
Lisa, many people have tuned into the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Have you been watching the drama unfold? What's the latest?
Getting some of the summaries here. So over the weekend, they did not get a verdict, so they stopped at final testimonies, and we're waiting to see who's going to win this. As you know, Johnny Depp is going for $50 million against Amber Heard for defamation for an op-ed that she wrote against him, saying that he was very violent and abused her, and she's countersuing him for $100 million, saying this is all in defamation. It's an important lawsuit, Hal, even though it looks like just Hollywood shenanigans, which it is to a certain point. It's a question of freedom of speech when it comes down to it. How free are we to make our speech? Can we just claim things about people that are true or might not be true? The fact that she was allowed to write an op-ed, I mean, anyone can do this. And we had the Me Too movement here in the United States that really, it changed the times. It almost made it as though every woman who comes out is a victim. Every woman should be believed. And certain times they're not to be believed. They do. I mean, any human being, male or female, regardless of gender, is capable of lying to push forward their narrative and their agenda. So in this case, did she have an agenda? Well, that will be for the jury to decide, 5 men and 2 women, to decide whether it was defamation on her part or defamation on his to kind of bring this lawsuit. So it's important. I think it's important because it'll put something on the map in terms of, are all women victims to be believed, or can we start to question these narratives the way we should in the court of law, hearing both sides, bringing in all sorts of experts. I mean, from ABC, Disney executives that were brought in to say, did they truly lose, jobs because of this, or potential roles in movies because of this op-ed that was written? So I think it's very important to see how this comes about, and I think it will really set a precedent in terms of these types of lawsuits.
U.S. correspondent and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.
Well, golf is either one of the most enjoyable and relaxing games on the planet, or one of the most frustrating. It all depends on your mindset. So we are here at the Lethbridge Country Club to try and get some great golf tips. I'm joined by Eric Porter, who is the PGA of Canada head professional here at Lethbridge Country Club. Eric, thanks so much for joining us today on Bridge City News.
Thanks for having us. Looking forward to having a conversation and hopefully give a few tips for our golfers to make this game a little bit more enjoyable.
Oh my gosh, and that's what it's all about. So let's get right into that. The golf season is open. Has it been busy so far?
We've been busy. We are, now that we're, weather's picking up, we're definitely seeing more traffic. We're definitely not at our COVID numbers that we were in 2020 and 2021, just with more activities going on. People are finding other things to do besides golf, but we still are quite busy. And now that the weather's picking up, we'll have more of our fair weather golfers showing up soon.
Yeah, and Eric, of course, you mentioned COVID. So have you found that the club has picked up a lot since the COVID restrictions have been dropped?
Yes, for sure. Last year was our record number of years that we ever hosted. So, I mean, once again, there wasn't a whole lot of activity for people to do. So this was a great social outing. You got some fresh air, met with your friends, and got some exercise. So we were busier than we have been, and we hope to continue having more and more people come out and enjoy our facility.
I'm sure they will, because it's a wonderful game sometimes when you're not frustrated. So let's get right into that. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see golfers make?
So one of the most common mistakes that we see golfers make is definitely overswinging. So everyone wants to hit the ball long and far, but when we swing too hard, that's when things go out of whack. So just, something like just slowing down your tempo. Instead of trying to hit it 400 yards, let's just try to hit it down the fairway so we have a clear next shot to the green instead of being in the trees. Some other mistakes that we do see is, players are using wrong equipment. This game is hard enough already. Now with custom fitting, being able to fit players to exactly to their spec, makes the game much more enjoyable and makes it much more easy for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you brought up equipment. We're standing here next to your golf bag. Yep. So is there certain equipment that the players, the golfers should be looking at specifically?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So when it comes to each golfer has totally different swings and swing speeds, body shapes, even just their mobility, injury, so on and so forth. So seeing any PGA professional for a custom fitting would definitely improve the game. We have shafts that are designed to hit the ball lower or higher. We have clubs that are, designed to hit the ball straighter, and just the equipment has changed so much, especially in the last 10 years. And with the technology that we utilize fitting clubs with TrackMan, Flight Scope, we're really able to dial in any golfer. And a lot of our higher handicap golfers are, I'm custom fit, my swing's never the same, what does it matter? Still, we could fit you, and we can make something that's going to make the game more enjoyable and just hit more consistent golf shots.
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything you can show us here in your bag that?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the most important things when fitting irons is what's called lie angle. So to demonstrate that here, Jenna, I'm just going to grab a club. So when we're doing custom club fitting for irons, as a club fitter, I'm just going to put this on my club to represent the golf ball. So when we fit a golf club, we want the middle of the club hitting the ground first. And that's going to give our best possibility of hitting down our target line. Something as clubs being misfit, if the toe digs in, you can see how the club now moves over to the left. So my ball is going to start more in the left direction. If the heel hits in first, the club's going to close. So something as simple as just getting a proper lie angle on your golf clubs will give you a much greater chance of hitting your intended target.
So Eric, speaking about equipment, how important is it to get the right equipment for yourself? And what about club lengths? Do these lengths have to be a certain?
Yeah,
clubs have to be a
definitely.
certain length?
Once again, every golfer is unique based on height, length of arms, hand size. So definitely, if you're going to be investing in golf clubs, I definitely recommend coming and seeing a PGA of Canada professional. You'll get properly fit. So once again, we have the proper shaft length, the proper shaft flex, the proper characteristics of, do we need to hit it higher, do we need to hit it lower? And grip, same thing. Depending on your hand size, that's going to dictate the size of your grip. And there's also other factors that may change your grip size as well. For example, seniors with arthritis, we want to get them in a great big grip so they're not squeezing so hard. So just little things like that. Once again, all equipment is fit directly to each individual, and I 100% recommend seeing a PGA of Canada professional to get properly fit. It will make the game much more enjoyable.
Any tips on how to deal with those windy days, especially here in Lethbridge?
There are definitely some tips that we could utilize and put in our bag to make the wind a little bit more friendly when we are playing. And when it comes to basically hitting a ball lower, if I was hitting a stock golf shot here with this 7-iron, my ball position would be basically in the middle of my stance. I'd make a full swing, my hands would finish up high like this. If we were trying to hit a low golf shot or in the wind, one thing we definitely recommend is club one to two clubs up. And then simply just by placing the ball position back in the stance, what's going to happen is the club's going to hit the ground. We're going to make a shorter follow through, and we're going to be able to hit the ball on a lower trajectory so the wind won't have as much factor. And like I said, definitely club up. A lot of golfers, when it is windy, the biggest mistake that most amateur golfers make is they get up there and, well, the wind's blowing in my face, I'm just going to swing harder. That's the worst thing you could do. You create more spin on the ball, and the wind is going to prevent more curvature.
Most of us don't have the greatest swing in the world, Eric. So what's your advice on picking up your swing, getting a better swing?
So to get a better swing, the first thing I'd focus on is finishing balanced. If we're able to finish a swing balanced, we're not over swinging. But most golfers, like I said, we're trying to hit the ball so far. If you're trying to hit the ball that far, take an extra club, swing less, so you'll be able to finish nice and balanced. So many golfers that we see on the golf course, they swing and they're falling all over the place. So when we hit a golf shot, we want to make sure that it's just back and we're able to hold that finish, that we're nice and balanced. If we're moving all over the place, we're just over swinging, and that's going to cause a lot of misstruck shots.
And then, of course, Eric, as we mentioned many times, it's a very frustrating game. So how do we not give in to frustration and keep our mind set calm? Any tips on that?
So first off, most golfers need to realize we're going out there for fun with our friends or family or, you know, working crew. We're not going out there playing for millions of dollars like the PGA and LPGA professionals. So the biggest thing is it is a game. Go in there with an open mindset of go out there, try to have fun. Don't worry about your score. And one piece of advice my dad always gave me is don't worry about your last shot, worry about your next shot. You can't change anything about your last shot. So if you hit a bad one, don't be down on yourself and, you know, letting it dictate the rest of your day. Just worry about hitting a good next shot and, you know, forget about that bad shot. There's nothing you can do about it. So just move on.
Great advice. I love that. How much does flexibility and physical strength play into a better game?
Flexibility is huge. The more flexibility that you'll have, the more turn, the more club head speed you'll be able to create. Obviously, if we hit the ball further, it's going to be much easier on our next shot to hit the ball closer. So definitely, you know, flexibility, doing any kind of yoga or anything like that will lead to more turn and essentially more distance.
That might actually help with your mindset as well.
And it will definitely calm you and keep your mind good too.
So Eric, a lot of people want to get their families involved. What's a good age to get your child involved in the game of golf?
So a great age for juniors to get involved is around that 4-5-year-old age. At that age, they have good mobility skills. Their attention span's a little bit more focused. In our junior program, we allow juniors as young as 4 years old to take part in our junior program. But once again, attention span's a little shorter, keeping them focused. But 4 or 5 is definitely a great age for them to start taking up the game.
So Eric, any final thoughts on why people should get involved in golf?
First of all, the game is a sport where you could play at any age. You could start as young as 4, you could play till you're 90. You get great exercise, good social event. For young professionals and golfing parties, we have a lot of corporate golf and stuff like that taking place. So it's definitely a good sport to take up for exercise, social, and once again, walking in a nice park like this, it's pretty hard to have a bad day.
Well, why don't we set you up on the fairway and you can show us how the pros do it.
Perfect. I'd love to hit a shot, so let's get set up. One of the first things you're going to notice when I'm teeing up the golf ball with the new technology with a high, deep face, teeing the ball nice and high. I get my ball position forward in the stance, nice wide stance, look at my target, nice low backswing. We want to finish nice and balanced, hold that finish, and hopefully hit it right down the middle of the fairway. Folks, we're going to talk about bunker play. One of the biggest mistakes amateur golfers make when they're hitting a bunker shot is they get set up and they decel. So it looks like this, they take the club back and we stop. So we do not want to stop. To demonstrate what happens when we decel, I'm going to get up there, I'm going to look at my target, take the club back, and I decel. What we want to do when we're in the bunker is we want to make sure that we make a big, long follow through to get the ball elevated in the air. So I get set up, open up my club face, take the club back, follow through, and we can snug the ball up nice and close to the pin.
So does the decel just mean that like you stop because the ground
you just
hits
stop.
you? So
yeah.
what happens, like, so you just keep going even though the ground stops you? That's what you're saying?
Exactly. We want to, what it basically is, Jeanette, is people just have anxiety and they're like, oh, I don't want to hit it past the green. So it's like, oh, I'm going to stop. So the key is, once again, just to get the follow through.
Okay, so Eric, why don't you give us some great tips on putting? That can be frustrating just as well as being on the fairway.
Yes, for sure. So just few things with putting. One thing we definitely want to do before we're hitting any putt is we want to assess the green that we're hitting on. We want to see, are we downhill, are we uphill, is the ball going to break to the left, is the ball going to break to the right? So just doing some general studies is going to make it a higher percentage of making our putt. After we pick a line, we need to make sure that we have, good weight. When we're making a putt, one tip that I would definitely recommend is never leave a putt short. I've never held a putt that I've left short, so always get the ball to the hole to give it an opportunity of going in. And in the longer putts, it's not so much of getting the ball in the hole, it's just trying to get it within, a 3-foot circle would be a great putt. So get your practice swings in, get a good feel, create that tempo and speed, and just go up there and put a good confident stroke on it.
What do you mean by leaving it short?
So by leaving it short is if I was hitting a putt from right here and I hit a putt and the ball landed right there, the ball had no chance of going in the hole. Where if I hit the ball and it went past, at least it had an opportunity to go in. And the other thing that if you're paying attention when the ball goes past the hole, on your comeback putt, you're going to have an idea of what the ball is going to do coming back. So once again, always make sure you get the ball to the hole and always study when the ball goes past so you have a better chance of making your comeback putt.
Eric, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope some golfers got some tips here that make the game more enjoyable.
Yes, hopefully all of our games will improve. Eric Porter is the PGA of Canada head professional here at Lethbridge Country Club. I'm Jeanette Rocher on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.